Welcome to the Mother-Daughter-ish podcast. It's your mama's favorite podcast.
And the podcast your daughter always wanted.
This is Miss Dawn.
And Angelique.
From the 713. Houston, y'all. Get connected and stay connected weekly as new shows debut on Sunday, Wednesday, and please check out our Saturday Out and About showcases.
Enjoy the show. Please subscribe, like, share, comment, and tell every woman on the planet that you know about our show.
Here's our show for today. Welcome to Mother-Daughter-ish, and today we're bringing you another great show, and I have a fantastic guest that I'm so excited to introduce you to. And today, guess what? We have a very interesting topic. I've had probably over 49 women ask me to talk about this topic, and just for the knowledge of it, most of them are not in a state that even handles this topic, so it's just very interesting to know that most people don't hear about it. But you know, when we hear something, Ms. Shields, in the public, it makes you go, what are they talking about? What does that mean? And that kind of is what has happened. So the topic that we're going to talk about today is alienation of affection. And that is something that happens during a split between a couple. And the reason that came up, by the way, and the reason I wanted your expertise on it is because it came up because one of the housewives' boyfriend, I have to get this together. One of the housewives' boyfriend's wife is suing for alienation of affection. And I've been told that there's other names for it, but that's the name that I've got a recall on. Back in the day, there was a case maybe about a decade ago where the singer Fantasia, her boyfriend's wife sued and won. And so that made a staple in the minds of the community of people who watch different shows. I don't watch any reality shows, so if I don't hear it coming from a news source or something like that, I wouldn't know it either. So let's talk about the alienation of affection. But first, let's have you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joann Shields. I'm an attorney practicing in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm with Ascent Law Firm, and I've been a litigator my entire career. I started at Brigham Young University Law School and clerked for a federal judge, and then I've just litigated since.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome. You know, I know that there's 7 states that have this law, you know, North Carolina, Hawaii, some other states, but I chose Utah because my son is there. And I thought, okay, that will kind of bring it to a connection of something. I didn't know anybody really up close and personal in any of the other states or Hawaii or whatever. So I was like, oh, I know somebody in that state. So I decided to choose your state simply because I have a connection there. So it just made sense for me to do it. So let's talk about alienation of affection. And, you know, the interesting thing about it is that you said that this law started in what year?
Well, it really goes way back into the Middle Ages when women were considered property of their husbands. And they were considered one person, and that person was the husband.
Yeah.
So a woman didn't even have personhood. So if you can believe this, if the husband believed that the wife was unfaithful to him, it was actually a trespass action because he could sue the paramour, and I'm going to call the lover of the spouse paramour throughout the podcast just for ease of reference. But
okay,
you could sue the paramour for trespass on your property. And that's how it all started. And originally, only men could sue for alienation of affection because the idea was that a wife didn't have any right whatsoever to her husband's services. and so women really had no rights here. It was a man could decide whether to sue for this. The idea behind alienation of affection is to protect the sanctity of the marital relationship.
Okay.
And it also protects a consortium interest. Now, a lot of people think there has to be sex involved, but that is really a misunderstanding.
To be emotional affair.
Well, it could be an emotional affair, or it could be an in-law who is creating all sorts of trouble and has alienated one of the spouses from the other. It could be a clergyman. It could be a psychiatrist. It could be people who have exerted themselves into this marriage and have somehow caused one of the spouses to reject the other spouse. So sex is not required. It's not required that there be an affair. Again, it could be an in-law. So loss of consortium is not just loss of the ability to have sex. And a lot of people think that's also what that means. You lose their love, companionship, and comfort from the security of a marriage and a unique relationship that arises in a successful marriage. So those are basically, it's anything that interferes with that.
So let's say,
now, as you mentioned,
let's say I'm the wife and I'm happy and I don't know anything about we're having any kind of problems that we're supposed to be getting a divorce about. I'm just going on about my happy way, doing my wifely duties or whatever. And then all of a sudden I see on TMZ or whatever that you've got this new girlfriend and you guys are gallivanting all about, and I'm sitting over here thinking you're off working, but you're off doing some other kind of work. So I now feel alienated because, okay, all of the attention and emotion and everything you were putting into me, I'm now seeing in 4K in real life that you're with this other person. Then I can go and say, hey, because you now have interest in this other person, I am being neglected at this point.
Well, it's more, what has the other person done to interrupt your marriage, to interfere with your marriage? So for instance, if the husband just falls in love with someone and the person really didn't solicit it, really didn't do anything, there's no cause of action for the wife. If the husband actively pursued the paramour and took all the action, then there probably wouldn't be a cause of action for the wife.
So if the marriage the wife wouldn't have any cause of action then if let's just say I'm with this guy and I don't even know he's married. I don't even know until the lawsuit comes. Like, he told me he wasn't married. Of course, I didn't look it up because he's a grown man, I'm a grown woman. I didn't look it up. So I wouldn't be at fault then, right?
No, you would not, because alienation of affection is an intentional tort. Meaning you have to know there's a marriage and you have to intend to break it up. And you have to take active steps to break it up. So, and then if the marriage is already on the rocks, then it becomes a question of, well, what really caused this breakup? Was it really the paramour, or was it already completely in shambles?
Right.
But Utah has a very interesting history, even on that score. Utah looks at two things. One, what did the paramour actively take steps, and was the paramour the primary cause of the breakup? And then they look at the quality of the marriage. And so that sounds as though that would be very difficult to prove, because every marriage has problems. And so then it becomes a qualitative thing. And the Utah Supreme Court has said, no, we're not going to say that we're going to abolish this whole cause of action because it's difficult to prove damages, or it's difficult to prove that the marriage wasn't already troubled and in a complete state of disarray. No, we're going to let the jury decide that. And so Utah has very interesting case law. It started out in there was a case in 1921, and the court basically excluded all the wife's testimony, saying that she couldn't testify about their marriage without her husband's consent, if you can imagine.
Because she was property, yeah.
And so that's 1921. So then we fast forward to the 1950s, and there was some more case law, but it basically affirmed a husband's right to sue for loss of consortium. And in the interim, law changed, and there was a Married Women's Act, And so that made it possible for the woman to sue. So then it changed so that women and men could sue for alienation of affection.
Oh, good. That was going to be my next question. Can a husband also sue his wife, boyfriend? Okay, so you answered that question. That's good.
And the wife can sue the husband's paramour, male or female.
Male or female, right,
So-
right. And
and
you
so-
you had mentioned a very unique case when I spoke to you earlier about Warren Jeffs, and I know a lot of people have seen the documentaries. There's literally, when I looked it up today, there's 3 different documentaries on Warren Jeffs, and you said that one was pretty unique because they were in a different state than when they brought the case to another state, right?
Yeah, and this brings up why it's important to find out in the law of your state.
Mhm,
Because in this case, it was a polygamous marriage,
wow.
and the couple lived in Colorado City, which is just across the border from Utah into Arizona.
Right.
But the wife had told her husband she wanted a divorce,
Mhm.
and then she went to Utah and talked to Warren Jeffs and his group. And I don't know, it didn't say in the case exactly who told her, but it was that group.
Mhm.
And she was told to divorce him. So
Mm.
then the question became, well, is this governed by Utah law, which allows the husband to sue for loss of consortium because he was suing Warren Jeffs for advising her to divorce him?
Mhm.
Or is it governed by Arizona, which does not allow the husband to sue?
Wow.
So the court finally said it's governed by Arizona law because that's where they live. And that's where the marriage is, and that's where the husband is injured. So he lost his case, and
So
he wasn't able to
wasn't able to
sue
get
because of
married.
Arizona law.
So now, if you get married in one of those 7 states, but then you know how you move away and you find another place to live, but your marriage certificate was in, let's just say, in Utah, but then you decide, well, you know, we've been here 20 years, let's move over to Texas. You get to Texas and somebody does this thing, this alienation of affection. Do we then file the divorce in Texas, or do we go back to where we originally were wed?
It would be where you're domiciled. So that's where you live.
So
And
then
in Utah,
Texas,
you have to be in
wouldn't be
Utah
able to
for
do it.
3 months. Yeah, so I don't know what Texas law is, but in Utah.
We don't
it's
have
3
that
months.
law. We don't have that law.
Oh, okay. Well, so I'm saying wherever you live, that would be the law that would govern.
But not where you got
because
married.
I was going back to the Jeffs case,
Yeah.
where they lived was where they were considered injured, where the husband
Oh.
was considered injured.
Wow. What's the biggest case other than the Jeffs? What's the biggest case you've heard of where somebody actually won?
Well, in Utah case law authority, I read every case today. There are only 32 that even mention this
That's not a lot. Okay.
cause of action. Well, because it's extremely rare
Yeah.
and it's hard to prove. And
Yeah.
so I don't think any of them in these reported cases, I don't think anybody actually collected a judgment. They were all reversed on appeal.
Oh,
But if you can believe this, the 1921 case awarded $25,000, which in today's dollars is $323,000.
wow.
And the court said that was ridiculous, but reversed it for other reasons. So I
Exactly.
can't really find a case where it stuck. But there is an interesting case where the paramour was sued and the husband lost. And then the paramour turned around and sued the husband for a bad faith litigation, malicious prosecution.
Really?
And he won $95,000.
95,000?
You're right, because the court said there was no basis for the first lawsuit, the alienation of affection case.
Oh my
And that was
goodness.
because they looked at things like, oh, this couple, both of them had affairs.
Yeah.
So the marriage was kind of in shambles. The husband had a criminal action against him for a sexual assault.
Mm.
You know, it just went on. And so the court said, no, look, that was an impossible marriage. And by the time this paramour came along, it was done. So that's that case. But I really have not seen one in Utah history that I could find today. I was looking again today to update and make sure that I saw the latest. And I can't see anything that's been upheld on appeal.
Wow. That's very interesting, because when I looked at those 7 states, I thought to myself, okay, why are there only 7 states? Did it used to be in the other states and they dropped it off the law book and it remained in some of those other states, or was it just never there? Because I don't understand how a law can be in one place and not be in another place unless it was there and was dropped off. How does that,
Well,
how does laws
that's a
like
good
that work?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, in one of our cases, it's kind of a landmark case. It's a Nelson case in 1991.
Mhm.
The, excuse me, 1987. The court said, pointed out that several states the legislatures had changed the law. You can
Yeah.
change a statute by legislature. Some of them, the judges had changed the law.
Yeah.
But all states had it at one time, and it was dropped by various means, either legislatively or judicially.
Now that makes sense, because now that I think about, the laws that they're trying to change now about consent and about marriage, I know in Alabama or Mississippi, I think the consent age is like 14 or 16. And in some other places, it's, other ages. And so I guess that makes sense then, that there could have been those laws and then they just got dropped off of the books, or they were just simply changed or something like that.
Well, every state can make its own laws.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
unless there should be a federal law that preempts the state law in that area, makes it so that the states can't make their own laws. But for the most part, states can make their own laws.
And so in our
That's
final
why it's different.
in our final conclusion here, what would be your advice to a wife that, let's just say, their marriage has been wonderful. They have not even had their first argument. They've been together 15 years. And then all of a sudden you look on TV and your husband's with another woman, and there's no witnesses that can say they ever saw y'all argue or anything. You're just a dutiful wife thinking everything's fine. What would be your advice to a wife like that? Would you say, hey, nobody's really ever won these cases and really were awarded anything, just get a regular divorce? Or would you say, okay, go after it? Because it almost sounds to me like a wife that would go after the alienation of affection is that she still wants her husband. Because she didn't say she was divorcing her husband. Yeah, this lady didn't say she was divorcing her husband. She said she was suing the girlfriend for alienation of affection. She didn't say I'm divorcing my husband.
Interesting. Well, there's actually case law addressing that issue, because it's saying it is not the task of alienation of affection to preserve a marriage.
Right.
It's to compensate the injured party for the injury.
Yeah.
So she even if the marriage is irreparable, she could sue for her injury and get damages. So my advice to her would be come and see me. And it would really probably, if they had a very harmonious marriage and she had evidence of that, then it would come down to, what did the paramour do? What steps did she take to break up this marriage? And did she intend to break it up? Because again, it's an intentional tort. And if the husband just fell in love with her, there's probably nothing. Or if he pursued her, there's probably not a cause of action.
Yeah, because like I was mentioning, the singer Fantasia, she was in a relationship or whatever with a gentleman. She ended up having a baby with him. The guy's wife sued her and won, and then the wife and the husband stayed together and raised the baby.
Oh, interesting. Well, that brings up a point.
I had never heard of anything like that in my life. 3 things. I never heard of a wife suing a girlfriend and winning. I never heard of her still keeping the husband after all of that, and then them sharing custody and the wife helping to raise the baby. But when money is involved, I guess things get a little tricky, because it's not like it was, some girl down at the Walmart that he had the baby with and cheated with. He cheated with an international superstar who could afford to, pay the bill. And so, that was the first time I heard. And it's funny, because when I heard of this, it was over a decade ago. When I heard of it, I was just like, that must be celebrity stuff. But now I realize it's a state thing. It's not a celebrity thing. It depends on what state you live in. I think that was North Carolina or something. But That's the strangest thing to me. I'm actually happy that Texas doesn't have that, because I think we're already called the Wild Wild West. I think we'd be way more wild then, because there's so many laws that we already have, like on common law. I was asking you about common law. Would that also work in a common law situation where we've been purporting as husband and wife? Everybody calls us husband and wife. They call us Mr. and Mrs. on invitations. Our neighbors know us as husband and wife. We have kids together. They know us at the school. So I guess you could sue for damages in that case as well, huh?
Well, if you could establish a common law marriage, some states say if you've cohabited for a certain period of time, it's automatically considered common law marriage. In Utah, there's no law like that, but you can go to the court and say, look, we've lived together, we're both on the house title, we have
Right.
children together, you know, the things that you named.
Yeah.
And so you could get a court to say you had a common law marriage, and then you could have a cause of action for alienation of affection if the facts arose. But it really comes down to what really caused this
What really
marriage to
caused
break
it.
up.
Got it.
And there was a man who wanted to sue the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for baptizing his son and alienating his son from him. And the court said, no, there's no such thing as alienation of affection between a parent and child. It's between, you know, a husband and a wife.
Did you
So,
see a few of those family ones on there where it wasn't a spouse situation, but it was a family alienation of affection situation? Did you see a lot of those on the books?
well, I didn't see them in Utah, but there's a kid, but one of the Utah cases said that in Illinois, let's see, it was Iowa, that in Iowa, as of 1991, 22 cases had involved family members.
Ooh,
So
that's a
it
lot.
just said
That's quite a bit.
22 were prosecuted against immediate family members of a spouse and did not involve extramarital sexual relationship. So, yeah, you can imagine the mother-in-law from you know where breaking up the marriage with someone she didn't like, you know, hasn't ever liked from the beginning. So, yeah, it could happen.
Wow, so interesting. I thank you so much for being on the show today and clarifying these different things. And let us know the name of your law firm again and where you're from. That way people can remember that.
I'm from Salt Lake City, and the law firm is Ascent Law Firm.
Awesome.
Ascent
Thank
like
you.
a mountain.
Thank you so much for being on our show today. I so
Thank you so
appreciate you. I
much.
thank you for taking the time this evening, and I thank you for just being willing to do it and to explain it to all of the women that listen to this show. We needed this so bad because the questions are there, and I'm like, well, I could research it, but why would I do that when I can talk to an expert? You know, that's what we do. If we don't feel like our thing is going to be sufficient enough, it's like, let's get the experts, because we know that you can pull it out. And I mean, the statistics that you gave today, it's like, how many families? What? You know, it's very interesting to just know that this is actually happening. And I just think that women should be aware. I think that, you know, they should just be cautious of people that you're talking to. Now, again, it's one story if you don't know. If you don't know what you don't know, there's nothing you can do about it. But to go into a situation knowing and continuing with it and knowing that this law could affect you and could, you know, affect your funds and affect your family, because, you know, your finances take care of your family, you should really know that's an issue there. And no matter what state you're in, you should still be aware that this is a possibility that could happen to you. So thank you so much for being here to share that with us. And I appreciate you so much.
You are so welcome. I just would like to say one last thing.
Yes.
One of the big criticisms of this whole cause of action is the idea that people just cannot resist temptation. You know, somebody comes along and just pursues and pursues and pursues, and the person cannot resist temptation.
No.
And so my parting word is, it's all about what the paramour does. And if the paramour is aggressive and takes all the action, then you might want to talk to a lawyer. If the alienated spouse takes all the action, probably no cause of action.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you, our listeners, for listening to the Mother-Daughter-ish show. Make sure that you go over to our Instagram at mother-daughter-ish_, and make sure you subscribe to the show today. And thank you for listening. Bye.
Thank you, Dawn. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, it's Miss Dawn. You wondering how you can support our show, Mother-Daughter-ish? We have Cash App, we have PayPal, and we do have Vimeo. Support our show so that we can reach out to more women. Our goal is to reach and build a community of 1 million women. Why don't you come on and help us do that? Wanting to book us for your show? It could be an expo. It could be any type of women's event. Contact Miller Booking Agency at mail.com. We're looking forward to meeting and greeting with you.